I want to start with the pink sheet that you have because it kind of summarizes everything that we've been learning. So just turn to that. And I want to begin with this formula over here. A reminder that is formula is used when we have 2 points and I'm trying to ask you to find the slope. Now we're going to be rearranging this formula, and today we're going to be using this one quite a bit, but I'll get to that in a second. I want to remind you of slope-intercept form, which is y is equal to mx plus b. And the m stands for slope and the b stands for y-intercept. And then in yesterday's class, we learned another form, which is called standard form. And we did a bunch of practice questions on that. So for standard form, it's in the order of x, y, constant is equal to 0. There are 3 rules. A must be positive. You can't have fractions or decimals, and it has to be in this order. But do all 3 of the items need to be there? Do all 3 of the terms need to be there? No. So you can have like the x and the constant, the y and the constant, the x and the y. That's fine. And then we also learned 2 of these new formulas. So to figure out the y-intercept, you're going to go negative c over b, and to figure out the slope, you're going to go negative a over b. I did give you a bunch of practice questions. Hopefully you did them, and if you have questions, we can take those up. Also, just as a reminder, to find the x and y intercept, I have this here, and I don't think we're going to talk about it, but in today's lesson. But remember, for the x-intercept, you let y equal to 0. For the y-intercept, you let x equal to 0. All right, so what is today's lesson? Today's lesson is how do you make or create an equation of a line? So far, we know if we have a graph, we can figure out the equation of a line by figuring out the slope and the y-intercept and putting it together. We know how to calculate the slope in many different ways. We know that there are 2 different forms of an equation of a line, but we've never before taken information and actually created our own equation of a line. So the way that we're going to do that is I've actually split this lesson up into 2 classes. In today's class, we're going to be looking at scenario number 1. And scenario number 1 is when I give you a point and I give you a slope. So in all the questions we do today, you're going to be given 1 point, 1 slope, and we're going to use that information without graphing it. We're going to figure out the equation of a line using algebra. In tomorrow's class, we're going to learn the second scenario, and that is when you have 2 points. So we'll get to that in tomorrow's class. But in today's class, when I give you a point and a slope, the one thing I want you to know is we're going to be using this formula a lot, and it is something you have to memorize. So it is y2 minus y1 is equal to mx2 minus x1. And if you really pay attention, you're going to notice that that formula is basically just this formula, but rearranged. What we've done is we've taken the denominator and we've moved it right beside the m, and that's how you get this new rearranged formula. I'll show you how that works and what we're going to do with it, but just keep in mind, keep this sheet in front of you so you can keep referring back to it. Okay, let's go to our actual lesson sheet, which is this one. I call it scenario number 1, creating the equation of a line using a point and a slope. I've also written the same formula at the top of the sheet, just so you can keep it in mind. When do you use this formula? You always use it whenever you're trying to create an equation of a line. So if the question says, create an equation of a line, make sure you're using this formula. All right, example number 1. It says, find the equation of a line with a slope of 6, and it's going through the point 3, 5. And I want you to solve this question without graphing it, but actually using algebra. We're also going to express the equation in slope-intercept form, which is y is equal to mx plus b, and standard form, which is what we learned yesterday. Okay, so how exactly do we do this question? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my information on the side. So I know the slope that we've been given is 6. And I also know the point that we've been given is 3, 5. And what I'm going to do to start off this question is I am going to label this point x1 and y1. We know every single point is x, y, right? X, y is always the case. But whenever I'm trying to find the equation of a line in this form, I always label my point x1 and y1. Okay, now we're going to start with that formula that I keep talking about, and it looks like this. It is y2 minus y1 is equal to m bracket x2 minus x1. And the one thing I want to tell you about this formula is do you see all these like 1s and 2s? Those are not exponents. That's not y to the power of 2. It's just y2. And that's just a way for us to keep our y's separate. You're basically just labeling them like y number 1, y number 2, x number 1, x number 2. Eventually, we are going to get rid of all those little subscripts, but for now, we're going to keep all of them. Okay. For the next step, what we're going to do is we are going to substitute all the values that we know from the information that's given. Do we have any information for y2? We don't know anything for y2. So let's go ahead and just copy that down. Do we have any information for y1? That is the number 5. So we're going to go y2 minus 5. Hey, oh, I'm so glad you're sitting here. We just started too. Do we have any information for the slope? It is just the number 6. Do we have any information for x2? Nope. So we're going to keep it as x2. And do we have information for x1? Yeah, we know that it's the number 3. So when you're using this formula, you will be able to substitute in at least 3 pieces of information. You'll still x and a y, specifically an x2 and a y2, and that's okay. That's normal. At this point, because we don't need a placeholder anymore, you could erase the little 2's there if you wanted, or you can erase them in the next step. So really, I'll actually erase them in the next step. Now, this is basically the beginnings of our equation of a line. We are going to rearrange everything and make it into y is equal to mx plus b form. So you do need to remember your algebra work. How do I get rid of brackets when I have brackets? Distributive, right? So what you're basically going to do is you're going to take this 6 and you're going to multiply it here and you're going to multiply it there. You're going to distribute the 6 to everything inside the bracket. Okay, so on this side, I'm going to have y minus 5 is equal to 6 times x. Remember, the little 2 doesn't matter anymore. We're going to get rid of the little 2, so it's just going to be 6x. And then 6 times negative 3 is just going to be negative 18. What do I need to do to make this into y is equal to mx plus b? What's the one step I need to take? Move the negative 5 to the other side. Good. So it's going to be y is equal to 6x minus 18 plus 5. And now we're just going to finish solving that. So it's going to be y is equal to 6x minus 13. And that's it. That is our final answer. And if we were to graph this line, like if we were to get a grid and we were to make a point at 3, 5, and we were to use like go up 6, 1 to the right, up 6, 1 to the right, you would notice that it passes through the y-intercept of negative 13. That would be the equation of the line. Emily? You could do that too, like y is equal to mx plus b. Yeah, absolutely, you could do that. All right, the question also says we need to change this to standard form. So in the last step, we're going to go ahead and figure out what the standard form would be. Okay, so we begin with our original equation, which is y is equal to 6x minus 13. I really need to just take one step to convert this to standard form. What would that one step be? Yeah, exactly. If I move y to the other side, look what happens. So I'm going to have 6x. Then I'll put the y right in the middle of that, which will become negative y, because the positive y changes to negative y, minus 13. And I'll just put the equals on this, the 0 on the other side. It doesn't matter which way your equals is. You know how last class we learned like the equal sign was, or the 0 was always on the right hand side? It can also be on the left hand side. You're still going to get the right answer. Is this in standard form? Is it in the order x, y constant? Is the a positive? Have we gotten rid of all the fractions and decimals? Yes, we have. So this is the proper format, and that would be our answer in standard form. Question number 2, we're going to get a little bit more tricky because we have fractions now and we have points and more negative signs. So find the equation of a line with the slope -2 over 5 and through the point 1 comma -2, express the equation in slope-intercept form and standard form. All right, so we're going to follow the same steps as before. Let's begin by writing down our information. So we know that m is equal to -2 over 5. And then the point that we have is 1 comma -2. And I always start by figuring or labeling my point x1 and y1. So it's just going to be x1 here and y1 there. I'm going to remember the formula is y2 minus y1 is equal to m bracket x2 minus x1. Oh, I really like her. All right, let's do the same steps that we did before. All right, let's do the exact same steps that we did before. Do we know what y2 is? No, we don't. So we're going to keep that as y2. Do we know what y1 is? Yes. And you have to be really careful because now we're dealing with double negatives. So we have y2 minus, and then in brackets, I'm going to put -2 because I recognize there's a minus sign that's part of the equation, and there's a minus sign that's with y1. Do we know what the slope is? It's -2 over 5. We don't know what x2 is. Do we know what x1 is? Yeah, it's just the number 1. So I have y2 minus -2 is equal to -2 over 5 bracket x2 minus 1. At this point, you can drop the subscripts like little 2's, and we're going to distribute the fraction into the brackets. And we're going to clean up, we're going to do a bunch of things. So hold on, I'll highlight all of them. So first, we're going to clean up these 2 signs, and then we're going to distribute the number inside the bracket. So it's going to be y plus 2 do you guys see what I did there? Drop the subscript and put the 2 negatives together to make a positive. This is going to be -2 over 5x because I'm distributing the -2 over 5 inside the bracket. And the -2 over 5 minus 1 is plus 2 over 5. How can I make this into y is equal to mx plus b? I just have to move one thing. Yep. Oh, are you guys having a hard time seeing this? Oh, I'm so sorry. You know why? It's because it's so dark outside. There we go. Yes, you have to move the positive 2 to the other side. Good. So we're going to go y is equal to -2 over 5x plus 2 over 5 minus 2 over 1. A positive 2 will become a -2. And I just made it into a fraction because I know eventually I'm going to need to solve those fractions. Okay, the last step we're going to do is we are going to find a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this by 5 and I'm going to multiply this by 5 because I need to add the constants together. Okay, so let's come back here. This is going to be y is equal to -2 over 5x. We can kind of do this in our head a little bit. Positive 2 minus 10 is going to be -8 over 5 because now both of the fractions, both of the denominators are 5s. Sorry, guys, I'm struggling with this. Okay, and then that would be our final answer in terms of y is equal to mx plus b. So if you were to graph this line on a grid, like if you were to start at the y-intercept of -8/5 and then go up and across, you would notice that it goes through 1 comma negative 2. You guys in the back, can you just be quiet? All right, we need to finish off this question by figuring out this in standard form. By the way, does anyone have any questions about this? You guys okay? Okay. So let's rearrange this equation that we just figured out and put it into standard form. Carly and Tishan? The step I'm doing right now, by the way, we're not solving for anything. We're just taking one form of the equation and changing it to another form. The values still stay the same. It's just a different way to write it. Okay, so we have y is equal to negative 2 over 5x minus 8 over 5. How can we change it to standard form? We actually have to get rid of the fraction. We have to make our a value positive, and we have to move the y. So we have to do a bunch of things. Where do you guys want to start? There's no right answer. Like, we could start. Do you guys want to start by moving the y first? Let's do that. Let's move the y to the other side. So it's going to be 0 is equal to negative 2 over 5x minus y minus 8 over 5. So all I did is I took a positive y and I moved it to the other side, made it into a negative y, and I put it right in the middle because I want it to be in the order x, y, and constant. Can you guys think of a magic number that I can multiply everything by? 5, yes. And how about the negative sign in the front? What could I do to get rid of that? Yeah, I can multiply it by negative 5. So what I'm going to do is I am going to multiply every single thing in this term by negative 5. Okay, so negative 5 times 0 is just a 0. Negative 5 times negative 2 is 10. 10 divided by 5 is just 2x. Negative 5 times negative 1 is positive 5y. Negative 5 times negative 8 is 40, and 40 divided by 5 is just 8, so it'll be positive 8. And that's the final answer if we want the equation in standard form. All right, the last question is find the equation of a line with slope 0 and through the point negative 4 comma 7. This time we just want to express the equation in standard form. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to say that this question we've actually done before when we were learning vertical and horizontal lines. I'm going to show you how to do this question in 2 different ways. So the first thing we're going to do is do it the way we just learned it. Our slope is 0 and our point is negative 4 comma 7. And so I'm going to label this x1 and y1. Hopefully after 2 examples, you guys feel a little bit more confident with the formula. So you can go ahead and try this with the formula and see what you get. So I'm going to have y2 minus y1 is equal to m bracket x2 minus. Oh, no, erase the whole thing. Okay, sorry guys, it's like a little bit delayed and I can't erase anything. It's frozen. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go y2 minus 7 is equal to 0, x2 minus negative 4. Hopefully you recognize that when you multiply anything by 0, the entire thing will become 0. So on the right-hand side of this equation, this entire term, because it's multiplied by 0, the entire term disappears and you're left with a 0 on this side. Yeah, and so we're gonna just drop the subscript. Y minus 7 is equal to 0, and that would be our final answer. Okay, now I want to show you where we've done this before, because we have learned this before, but we did it in a slightly different way. Oh my gosh, guys, this program is like, why is it doing that? All right, when we were learning about vertical and horizontal lines, remember what we said about slope equals to 0? What does that mean exactly in terms of what kind of line we have? A zero slope, is that a vertical line or a horizontal line? Peyton? Horizontal. So when we did a question like this before, what we did is we didn't actually use algebra, we just graphed it. We first found where -4, 7 was. So let's say it was over here. Then we would make a point, and a slope of 0 means it's a horizontal line. So we would just use a ruler and draw a line going through this point. And then, oh no, my line is off. You know what? That means these numbers are off. And then in order to figure out this equation, what do? We just look at what point it's going through and what line it's going through. Hold on, this is gonna bother me. So this right here is, what did I say, 7? So it's going through the y-axis at the number 7, which means the equation would be y is equal to 7. This isn't in standard form. To get it into standard form, you just move it to the other side. So it's gonna be y minus 7 is equal to 0. So you can do it either way. You could use algebra now, or you can just graph it and figure it out that way. All right, that's the end of our lesson. Okay, look at our time. We have 40 minutes. The questions I'm going to give you, you can very easily do them in 40 minutes, but I do feel we're chatting a lot. We're not really concentrating. We're distracted. I'm going to say, in order for us to leave for lunch, I need to see this work done to keep you motivated, so you're not just chatting. The practice questions are at the back. So questions 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and question 3. All the answers are given at the bottom, but I still want to see all of your work. Okay, so go ahead and get started on that.